Knievel, the death-defying daredevil, etched his name into the annals of history 50 years ago in 1975 with a jaw-dropping motorcycle jump at Kings Island that still reverberates through the ages. This daring leap of faith took place amidst cold, drizzly weather in the Kings Island parking lot, where a crowd of 25,000 spectators gathered to witness the stunt of a lifetime. Little did they know that they were about to witness history in the making. Broadcast live on ABC's iconic program, Wide World of Sports.
I'm Ryan, that's Don, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics, it's available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe and stay up to date with all things Kings Island.
I'm excited for this episode, Don. We're hitting 50 years. This episode drops on Friday. 50 years will be Saturday. I was there front and center with you for Robbie Knievel,
Yes.
15 years ago or so. God rest his soul. Drop some knowledge on me. I want to know more about this.
Well, as you mentioned, 50 years ago was October 25th, 1975. So Evel Knievel, he etched his name into history with a motorcycle jump. At that time, you got to remember the weight of the motorcycles back in those days, and that. So at that time, it was so daring, but yet so unforgettable that it still echoes through pop culture today. And it was on a cold, drizzly afternoon in the parking lot at Kings Island. 25,000 fans packed in to witness the death-defying spectacle. And Knievel at that time, Ryan, I mean, he was already a national icon for his audacious stunts, most of them unsuccessful. So he's about to attempt what would become, the longest jump of his career and one of the most notable.
Yeah. So this happened at Kings Island. It was this time of year. Was the park open?
Park was open. Normally they didn't go that deep, so they did have the park open. So of the attendance figure, the 25,000, 20,000 of them held what was called a combo ticket. They granted them admission to both the park and the jump. 5,000 came just specifically for the stunt alone. And, but millions, including myself, they tuned in from their home. ABC's Wild World of Sports carried the event live, an audience that would make the highest rated broadcast in the show's history. And this show had a long history, earning a 22.3 rating and a 52% share.
Yeah, legendary show. I think that he put that show on the map while that show helped put this event on the map. I think that's definitely true. Now, the jump itself, he jumped with Harley Davidson's, a little bit different from Robbie Knievel.
Yes, he did. His was a Harley Davidson XR 750. A lot of weight to that. When Robbie jumped, much lighter. The bikes that came about decades later. So you see longer jumps, more acrobatic jumps than you did back in his day. But to make the jump, he accelerated. He was coming along at 95 miles per hour in the Kings Island parking lot. A lot smoother back then than it is today. I remember Robbie telling us how bumpy the parking lot was when he did his, as he was approaching it, his bike was shaking, that it was so bumpy out there. But he launched himself skyward. He soared 133 feet over a row of 14 Greyhound buses. His bike, though, it clipped the last bus on the landing. So his motorcycle, nearly got torn apart, when he hit the top of the ramp and the 14th Greyhound bus. Yet somehow, he was able to stay upright. That jump, set the world record at the time for distance and became the pinnacle of his legendary career. And it was one of those moments that transcends sports, inspires awe and disbelief and in equal measure. I mean, it was a spectacle, at that time. Again, I watched it on television, and I was amazed that he was able to jump his bike that far. And for viewers across America, it embodied a very essence of courage, showmanship. I mean, he was a tremendous, self-promoter, and that is, as we've talked about on previous episodes, when comparing him and Robbie. But he was a man, he was always willing to risk everything, his life to prove that the impossible, could be done.
Yeah. And so several things that I didn't know about this until we started preparing for the show, but it almost didn't happen. Tell us that story.
Yeah, it almost did not happen. Behind the scenes, the jump, there was a lot of negotiations back and forth between Knievel and the Kings Island camp. Kings Island's promotions manager, James Gruber at the time, marketing director Bill Price, who later became a general manager there. They spent months negotiating with Knievel, but he was also fielding offers from other venues in a last-ditch effort to make sure that they got the jump at Kings Island. Gruber and Price, they flew nearly 2,000 miles to Butte, Montana. They met with Knievel there. He was involved with a Labor Day golf classic. They reportedly followed him all around the golf course, trying to hammer out the tails, between shots. Knievel, a little bit of a difficult personality. It's been well documented. Very moody, temperamental. Um, you know, frustrated. I think he missed a putt, and he was angry, and he sent them away without signing the contract. But the next day, he was willing to change his mind, inking the deal, and that would cement Kings Island's place in Daredevil history. So after the deal was struck, 15 minutes later, Gruber and Price, they're back on a plane going to Cincinnati with the contract in hand, and one of television's greatest moments officially was in the books, or on the books.
So this is a question that I've kind of formulated based on the information that I learned today, but I want your take on it. Do you think that this event meant more to Kings Island or meant more to Evel Knievel from a legacy and career standpoint? Assuming that Kings Island as an entity has a career.
That's a great question, Ryan. And I don't know that it benefited one more than the other, because at that time, Kings Island, it opened in 72, so 75, it's only been open, 3 years. But it kind of, put it on the map there as to where it was in Mason, Ohio. It was front and center, everything leading up to the jump with all the TV footage, and that you could see the amusement park in the background, the rides going. They talked about Kings Island a little bit, about what it was. So it helped from that perspective. But I do think, if I had to pick one or the other, I would say Knievel, because it was a successful jump. Other ones like Caesar's Palace and a few others, he crashed. He was more notable for that than having success. So to be at the end of his career, this was the last really big jump that he did. He did some smaller things, but to be at the end of his career, to kind of end it this way, and having the television ratings that it did. I think the year before when he tried to do the Snake River Canyon jump, and that was unsuccessful. So he was determined to kind of end it on a high note, and he did. So let's go with Knievel then, as far as who really benefited the most and who it meant the most to. So I'll go with Knievel there.
Okay. In the same vein, what do you think was a bigger event for each year? I'm not talking about legacy wise. I'm saying for 1975, was Knievel a bigger event for Kings Island, or in 1979, The Beast? They both drew national and international audiences. I know that The Beast legacy lives on much longer, but for that particular year, which one had people talking about Kings Island more?
So I think it was The Beast, Ryan, and the reason being is that people saw Knievel's jump on television and through clips and things, at that time and for years later. But The Beast actually got those people to come visit Kings Island. I don't know that Evel Knievel's jump, really helped spike attendance. It was at the end of the season, in October. They weren't open really weekends in October, and it was something that they did special for this. So it's over. People can't come. They forget about it by the time you get to April or May the next year. So The Beast, when that opened, you had people coming from all over the world specifically to ride The Beast. They continue to do that today. So I think The Beast was the bigger event, the opening of that ride.
Fair enough. I was leaning that direction too. But sometimes, having not been born yet when this happened, I don't always understand the magnitude. For example, The Beast, I always knew that was a big deal, but it's still like it's not lost on me when people from England and Czechoslovakia and places like that fly all the way to Cincinnati because they have to ride the Beast. So obviously this Evel Knievel thing, and I remember my parents telling me about it. Like, do you know Evel Knievel jumped a bunch of Greyhound buses in the parking lot? Now the stories kind of run wild about he crashed. I've heard that he jumped over the Royal Fountain, which would have been awesome. I heard he jumped Whitewater Canyon. That's a common myth, but no, it was Greyhound buses in the parking lot. What do you think the legacy of this event is, like 50 years later?
Well, it's like I said, that TV rating. I mean, 52% share. Everybody in the country, all across the country, was tuned into it. So I think it's one of it would probably be the most memorable event, most notable event in Kings Island's history. And they've had a lot of notable events. I mean, they've had 3 different Walindas do skywalks there,
Mm-hmm.
including Carl Walinda, back in, I think,
Yeah.
1974. So they had him, they had Rick Walinda, they had Nick Walinda. Those were, tremendous events, big time, spectacles in that. Robbie Knievel, his jump. Um, didn't get that 52% share of the TV audience. Wide World Sports by that time was not doing what they had done. Um, so, but everybody knew about it. I mean, it still made nationwide and around the world news when Robbie did that. Great crowd came out for it. But there's been other different events that Kings Island has done. But number one, at the top of the list, it has to be Evel Knievel. This was the first real big thing that they did. Very few people knew about Carl Walinda's walk at Kings Island. There's very little, photos and videos of that happening. There's a lot of photos about Evel Knievel. You don't ever hear somebody say, "I was there when Carl Walinda did his walk." You never see that popping up anywhere. You do see, I was at Kings Island, or my parents were at Kings Island, my grandparents were there when that happened. As many people that want to make that claim, that 25,000, would be over 100,000, if everybody truly was there when that happened. They might have been there watching it on TV, a lot of people, but it's memorable. I still remember it. I mean, I remember sitting in living room, in Anderson Township at my house, and my dad and my brother and my sister and my mom, we all watched it. We were, just hoping that he would make it. We knew who he was, and it was one of my, my brother's, childhood heroes was Evel Knievel. We both had the little Evel Knievel motorcycles. We got it as a Christmas gift one year, a little toy.
I've seen that on Pawn Stars.
Yeah,
That's worth
yeah. So
something
we
now.
both, yeah. So I wish I'd kept that in mint condition. That would have been worth a lot of money. But it was memorable. And when you think about Kings Island events, I mean, that has to be number one. I don't know what would knock it off. Can you think of anything?
No, because it's purely unique because it was if it wasn't on Wide World of Sports, it would kind of be more of a footnote, just like a cool fact, kind of like the Walinda thing. But being on Wide World of Sports, which was a huge program in '75, um, that's a big deal. You compare it to like ride announcements and stuff like that. Like I remember, you got coverage out of like I don't know, Germany and on Mars and on the moon and whatever for Banshee. But this
Banshee,
is a lot.
Diamondback, Mystic Timbers. Those things were
Windseeker.
not hard to get. Were not hard. Yeah, Windseeker. Yeah, exactly. Windseeker, Dinosaurs Alive, Tropical Plunge. I mean, they all got international coverage. But it wasn't. It's not memorable to people. I mean, people. If you ask them when did they announce Tropical Plunge, they might remember the year. Very few people, with anybody, without looking up, is going to know what the date was when those events got or those new attractions got announced. Banshee was a memorable event for guests. Some say it's the best media, announcement event they've ever been to. A lot of it had to do with the atmosphere, making that at night. It was unconventional. Nobody ever did nighttime announcements in the amusement theme park industry back then. So that one, was special, and people remember that. But it has to be, half century later. I mean, Evel Knievel's, jump, it remains a defining chapter, in American entertainment. It was more than just a stunt. It was a symbol of ambition, the courage that he had to have to do that.
Mhm.
You know, and the thrill of chasing something, you know, bigger than fear. And that's, you know, what drove him. That's what drove his son, you know, Robbie, was just that, you know, chasing something bigger than fear.
We're gonna have to revisit the Robbie Knievel thing because I like talking and thinking about that.
That was a
How
fun
many?
time. You know, that was my
Oh
first
my
real
god.
big thing that I did at Kings Island in 2008. We didn't have that year when I was doing the PR. There wasn't a new ride. They were still in that transition from Paramount to Cedar Fair. Uh, so we had to come up with things, and special events, you know, came back into vogue for Kings Island, you know, like it had been in its earlier, you know, history.
Mhm.
So we thought, why can't we do these kind of things? You know, why does it have to be a new ride that brings people out? Why can't it be spectacles? You know, so that's where we had, you know, Robbie Knievel in 2008. And then they had, you know, followed by the Walinda walks and that. But, you know, that was, you know, my first really big thing that I did. And we only had a couple of weeks to put that together. You know, we'll talk about more about that on an upcoming episode since you want to kind of reminisce about that. But, you know, that was also spectacular. But also, we got to hear a lot of stories from Robbie, you know, talking to
Yeah,
him. And I would take him around to the media and hear stories about Evel's jump at Kings Island because Robbie was there. You know, Robbie was, you know, 13, 14 years old at the time. And, you know, he was out there on his bike, you know, hot dogging it, you know, during the week when Evel would be doing media interviews and that there'd be Robbie there in the parking lot, you know, doing wheelies and, you know, flips and things. And, um, the practice ramp, you know, jumping off of that and things. So Robbie was kind of showcasing the skill he had back then. He was actually the um, better you know, on bikes. You know, he could do more. You know, he was better with the stunts. He was more skilled on the bike
and
than
he
Evel
had
was.
50 years of development too, where his
Yeah,
bike was
yeah, yeah,
lighter
yeah,
and
yeah. He was
faster.
he was definitely the more skilled of the two.
Mhm.
But Evel was far and away the better promoter, the better marketer. You know,
Oh, he was a
you could,
brand. He was the first, like, human brand like that.
yeah, you could have, yeah, you could, you know, if you just went back and researched and understood what Evel Knievel, you know, how he developed into Evel Knievel and how he promoted himself and that. I mean, anybody that's in marketing, you know, should do a project and research and see how he went about it. You know, and you would be much better at your job, you know, if you did that. And I kind of came from that world a little bit because I had a guy when I got into professional hockey, you know, in 1990 when I was with the Cincinnati Cyclones, former professional wrestler. You know, he ran the Southeast Wrestling Federation. You know, he was a tremendous promoter. Same kind of background in that you know, Evel Knievel came from. You know, so you learn a lot from being around those people, talking to people, and just hearing what Robbie talked about. You know, you knew why everything that Evel Knievel did garnered, you know, worldwide attention. You know, and how he was able to do that.
Absolutely. How many of our listeners do you think are old enough to remember, this actually happening live?
You know, I don't know. It's worth throwing it out there to our listeners. You know, if you're old enough to remember it, you know, leave a comment. You know, did your parents watch it on TV in person? You know, let us know. We'd love to hear. You know, what you remember or what you know about Evel Knievel's motorcycle jump at Kings Island again, either in person, on TV, on ABC's Wide World of Sports, or just from, you know, your parents, your grandparents, maybe friends, uncles, relatives, whoever might have been there for that event.
Absolutely. Yeah, leave it in the comment. We'd love to hear your story and your memories. Don, you know, I always told you that Travis Kelsey really was the true hero of Kings Island. Well, now we've got proof because we've got our guardian angel, and I mean that tongue in cheek because this is complicated. But tell us about how Travis Kelsey is involved with Six Flags now.
Well, as most you know, Travis Kelsey, he's a tight end and pop culture favorite. He's with the Kansas City Chiefs. But he and Jana Partners have teamed up for an activist investor campaign at Six Flags Entertainment, where the group has acquired a 9% stake in the company. The
Mhm.
deal involves pushing for changes to improve the theme park company's performance, the brand, guest experience through strategies like, you know, revitalization of marketing,
Mhm.
modernizing technology, and evaluating leadership. So that was big time news when that broke this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's some are saying 250 million. My calculation's closer to like 100 something million for 9% stake. Depends on what they bought it at, because obviously this purchase moved the stock price. I wonder what Travis Kelce's actual financial investment in it is. Is he going to be the new Dolly? Is he the Dolly Parton of Kings Island? Is it Travis Wood now?
You know, I don't know. I mean, he's been getting involved in a lot of different things. You know, he's been building his portfolio. So not a surprise to see this. I do know that he and his brother Jason, that growing up in the Cleveland area, they did go to Cedar Point, every summer. Something that they loved. He's mentioned that multiple times. Jason's mentioned that multiple times. Whether it's their own podcast or just elsewhere, that they love going to Cedar Point and other parks. How involved is he? He told People magazine that he was excited to be part of Cedar Fair. Which
maybe he just can't
flags.
stomach saying Six Flags like the rest
So,
of us.
I don't know how much money that he's actually got in it. People are asking, is he the savior? Is he going to do this? Is he going to, they think he's going to have a lot of decision making power in that. He does not. I think that kind of an investment, it buys time, for the company a little bit. But it's just delaying, the inevitable on the path that they're on right now. So I don't know how much of an impact, this will have. They're going to need some more people like them to get on board. So if, you like investing in sinking ships, now's the time to jump on board.
White Star Line is another stock I'd recommend if you like sinking ships.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not going. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it's not going well for the company. I mean, it's just not. And something like this, gives them a little bit of an infusion. It gets, his name, generated a lot of buzz this week. And that's a good thing for Six Flags, so we'll see where it takes them. And, nobody wants to see it, go the direction it's headed. So hopefully, some things start to come together. Attendance gets better, revenues go up. You get some more investors in that. You get some, the new leadership comes in, has some different ideas on how to run the company, and we'll see where it takes everything.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, and I had this discussion with somebody online earlier, the investment they made is not giving the company money. They bought shares on the open market, which is my understanding, which is why the shares went up instead of down. Because if they had bought treasury shares, it would have flooded the market. They would have gone down 5% instead of up. But when you have a 9% stake, what you can do is you can demand board seats. If you get board seats, then you get to choose who the CEO is, and you get to choose the direction of the company, loosely speaking. So now Jana is that's private equity. They are known to spin off the properties like a REIT. They didn't say that that's the plan. That could still be the plan. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but at the very least, we have a little bit of hope, because somebody's coming in saying we're going to do this by improving the guest experience, by improving management, by improving processes. Not we're going to unlock the power of our property, and then ultimately everything's going to be a housing project in 25 years.
All right.
All right. But enough about that. Let's give a shout out to our Prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Rao, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, Guys and Girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, and Galaxy B-Boy. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive to content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers you can get some free stuff. So hit that link if you're interested. Starts at just $2.99 per month. That's like not even a cup of coffee anymore. Don, let's hear a word from our friends and sponsors at Land of Illusion Haunted Scream Park.
Feel the pulse of terror at the nation's #1 rated haunt. Head to America's most visited Scream Park, Land of Illusion, the ultimate haunted destination. 6 bone-chilling attractions. All-night fun with a full bar and a food court to fuel your adventure. Will you conquer the scares? Land of Illusion. Get tickets now at landofillusion.com.
And this is going to be a surprise to me, but Don's cooking up a hot take. Hit us, Don.
I do have a hot take here, Ryan, and it comes from having discussions this fall with a number of people that, it includes our listeners and some other people that I just see, on the midways or in a queue for a ride, visiting different parks and that, what my thoughts are on this. So, here it goes. So every fall, Ryan, theme parks across America, they undergo their seasonal transformation. Midways get filled with pumpkins. Rides glow against crisp autumn skies, and seasonal flavors, they take center stage. But depending on where you go, the experience can feel very different. At Six Flags, with Halloween Haunt at Kings Island and other parks, you've got Hallow Scream. They lean heavily on the scares, heavily on that. And, they're shrouded scare zones, haunted houses, monsters lurking in the dark, with the scare zones. They're effective at what they do. But after years of visiting parks across the country, I found myself recommending something else entirely when guests ask me where they should go for Halloween. When people ask where to go for the best fall theme park experiences, I point them toward Dollywood and Holiday World. Both parks have discovered the magic of celebrating autumn without relying on fear. Instead, they've embraced atmosphere, tradition, and inclusivity, turning their parks into places where families, couples, and seasoned park goers alike, they can immerse themselves in the fall season. At Dollywood Harvest Festival in the Smoky Mountains, fantastic event. Just got back from there. The park glows with autumn color during the day. Pathways, they bustle with artisans demonstrating their crafts, from wood carving to jewelry making, while live music fills the air. Bluegrass, gospel, and Americana echoing from stages scattered throughout the park. Seasonal food offerings, they tempt at every turn in the park. Whether it's pumpkin infused treats or Dollywood's famous cinnamon bread, you can't pass up that, right? So, when night falls, the park transforms into the Great Pumpkin Lumi Nights. With thousands of glowing pumpkins, creates a dreamlike wonderland, really. So it's festive, whimsical, and distinctly Appalachian. It's a celebration of places as much as the season. And then you look several hours northwest in Santa Claus, Indiana, Holiday World. Just got back from there. It takes a similar yet distinct approach with happy Halloween weekends. Here, the spirit of fall is alive with, you got hay rides, you got trick-or-treat trails, family rides that feel even more special against the backdrop of harvest decor. This park, this year they introduced something, even more colossal. It's the Dino Corn Maze Adventure. It's spread across 12 acres. The maze is home to more than 24 life-size dinosaurs, from a towering 70-foot Brachiosaurus to a menacing Tyrannosaurus. Some of these dinosaurs, they move, some roar, but they all amaze when you're going through this corn maze. It invites families to step back millions of years into the prehistoric world. And just when you think the day is over, if you're there on a Saturday, Holiday World looks to the sky. So on those Saturday nights, you got dinos in the sky. It takes flight. It's got more than 500 drones choreographing dinosaurs and flying reptiles above the park. It's a spectacle, every bit as jaw-dropping as the biggest Halloween events in the country. And yet still grounded in the park's family-friendly atmosphere. And in the world of, when you're looking at Holiday World, in the world of, when you're looking at world-class coasters, Voyage, Raven, Legend, Thunderbird, seasonal foods, signature perks like free drinks, sunscreen, and parking. Happy Halloween weekends. It becomes a standout seasonal tradition for many families, including mine. The difference for me really comes down to longevity. When you're talking about Dollywood, Holiday World versus the Six Flags Halloween events, Kings Island's Halloween Haunt and other Six Flags events, they deliver thrills in the moment, and they're really good. You scream, you jump, you laugh nervously as you make your way out of the haunted houses or mazes, whatever way you want to describe them, through the midways, with the scare zones and that. But Dollywood and Holiday World, they deliver memories, that linger long after the pumpkins are packed away. They've created events that invite everyone in, guests of all ages. So whether you're a diehard coaster rider, a parent with young kids, or someone who just wants to soak in the sights, sounds, and flavors of fall, uh, that's why I recommend, Holiday World and Dollywood, and I prefer those events, over what the Six Flags parks do. Both of those parks, they offer what a Halloween event can be. Not a night of running from monsters, but a celebration of autumn's magic, where the spirit and glow of pumpkins, the roar of dinosaurs, and the warmth of live music remind us why this season is worth savoring.
I like that. So so you say you prefer the family-friendly events at Holiday World and Dollywood.
So, like, should Kings Island go away from Haunt and do something like Dollywood or something like Holiday World? And I do think that they could do that very well. They could have something at night, with the pumpkins like Dollywood has, where it's all lit up. You don't have to close down a section of the park at 6 o'clock, with Planet Snoopy, Camp Snoopy. All guests can take part in this. There's not a separation. Everyone's favorite rides are open. You could expand the menus for what they're offering in the fall. You can have the trick or treat stops. So you could really make it something special. And again, that inclusivity, you're not driving guests away because it's not made for, audiences that aren't 13 and over. I just think it's something. You look at the demographic who goes to Kings Island. It's has been, is now, always going to be families. That's the the majority of the demographic. Just hundreds of thousands of season pass holders, are right there and within a 60-mile radius of Kings Island. They do well with Haunt. People go, people get scared. They like that. But as I mentioned, it's in the moment. It's not something that creates those memories that last longer. You're not seeing as many, photos of families in front of the decor and, the other fun festive things that you see at the other two parks, that I mentioned, Dollywood and Holiday World. Those are more, are better memory makers. And as if you're a single person, you might see it differently. You probably do. But if you have, a family, young children in that, and now I have a grandchild, and I think about taking her to different parks and that in the fall. And, when we were at Dollywood, she's 8 months old, but her eyes were just, mesmerized on the colors, the pumpkins and everything. As it got night, she liked looking at everything, and she's 8 or 9 months old. So that stood out to me. And as I get asked about it, what do you prefer? What Holiday World and Dollywood do, or what Kings Island does, Six Flags does? I like what the other parks do better. I just think it's a better fit. It doesn't have to be scary to be successful. And when the maze charges came out, how many people said, "I don't care, I just go for the rides anyway"? So
Most.
are they really? Yeah. So I mean, is it really? Is that really driving the attendance to mazes? I don't think so. I think it's just being in the park at night, during the Halloween season, being able to get those night rides and the atmosphere. And, you could still do what you do, on the fountain. You could still make that what it is, and you could do some other things, but it doesn't have to be Halloween Haunt. You could just rebrand it and have a lot of success. And I think get more families in that, going to the park. I don't think they would see an attendance drop. I think they would actually do better on the Friday nights, the Thursday nights. I think the Sunday nights, the Sundays during the day, and at night would be better, stronger, if they made it one unified event that, appealed to guests of all ages. That's my rant.
Yeah, I really understand where you're coming from, and if you're a business person, that would be a tough decision to make because you make some really good points. Um, to counter that, though, with having tricks or treats during the day and haunted night, it's almost like a complete turnover of the population of the park. So you would have to assume that more people would come to, whatever the rebrand is, than the two of them combined, theoretically. Would you keep it open till midnight, or would you make it like a 10 o'clock thing?
I don't think you have to keep it open till midnight. I think you could have an event that went from like 11 to 9. I don't think it has to go to midnight. 11 to 9, 11 to 10. Um, so it doesn't have to go that long. I think just having, you replace some of the intense type of decor in that with the fun family type things. I mean, Dollywood, they did this candy corn country as an area.
Mhm.
This year it's new, but just brilliant. And how it, set up and just I'm just watching how many families, were loving this and taking those photos in front of the different candy corn props and that, that were located in the different scenes throughout there. Uh, you're not seeing that when you go to Kings Island, Kings Dominion, Cedar Point. You don't see that, as much and everything. So it just kind of really, same thing at Holiday World. People taking photos in front of the decor and that. There's some great props. If you're going to Good Gravy, there's these pumpkins and that. Everybody's taking photos there. The dinosaurs, the entrance to that, has a big dinosaur right there, T-Rex. And that's people were lining up trying to take family photos. Getting in front of that photo and that they loved it. So the food too. I mean, the atmosphere. I mean, I think it's just there's a deeper lineup of fall food at those two parks than what you see at any of the Six Flags parks for the fall. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's what you want to do. It's more of a celebration of the season. It's a great time of the year. The weather changes. You got the fall foliage and that on the trees and that. So I think if they were to rebrand and do something like that, I think they would have a lot of success with it. And I don't think their attendance would suffer, at all. Same people that are coming to haunt to ride the rides, they're going to come. The people that come just for the mazes and that, they're still going to come because it's going to have atmosphere. It's going to have, nice decor. Now they'd have to spend some money to buy, the decor, the pumpkins and all that, and replace, the skeletons and that they have around the park with something that's a little more family friendly. But it would be so worth it. I really think if they're looking for a way to rebrand and, have a lot of success in the years ahead for the Halloween season, that's the way to go.
That's a very interesting take, Don.
All right. Now it's time for what we call the listener questions.
Okay, first listener question is going to be Brian from Hamilton. Brian said, hypothetical question. Say Six Flags sells the land under Kings Island and the purchaser turns it into a new Mason residential area. What happens to Tower Topics if it goes that direction? Do you still do it and reminisce about what once was, or close shop?
That is a nice hypothetical question. We would rebrand. I think we would become Tower Estates, and we would just do 3 episodes a week, just focusing on the houses that are available in the new Mason area. I think that's what we would do.
That's a good idea. And also, I mean, if they build a skyscraper there, we can still just be Tower Topics, really, just talking about the goings on of the tower in Mason, Ohio at 6300 Kings Island Drive.
That's right.
But, yeah, good question, Brian.
I would not, though. I mean, that's still, slim possibility, but it's in the realm of possibility that down the road, depending on what they do, that could happen one day,
Yeah. No, I mean, you got to root against it, but a lease back where a company buys land, builds something, and then sells the land and leases it back is really, really common. Best Buy, Walmart, a lot of fast food places, they all do it because it frees up the cash. I think what you're alluding to is, let's say they spin off the property, they get the cash infusion they need, and then 25 years from now, there's another pandemic, or Six Flags again, like they did in 2008 or whatever. There's a major economic downturn. and all of a sudden they owe this other company a bunch of money for their land. So, I mean, for those who are local Cincinnati,
Yeah.
that's what happened to Frisch's, not uncommon. It's not an evil thing. It's just, I would prefer it not to happen.
Right.
All right. Andy from Cleves, Ohio said, did you catch the Kings Island blunder on Instagram? They claim there are only 4 nights left to haunt when there's actually 7. Since you left, the KI socials have turned into a nonstop blooper reel. It's giving a high school intern running the page between classes look and feel. Honestly, I'm glad I never ordered from them at Skyline Chili. I'd ask for a 3-way and probably end up with the 3 cheese conies. Not exactly confidence inspiring for a brand under the Six Flags banner. But then again, competency isn't really their thing lately. Be honest, Don. If they called and begged you to come back and fix the social media crisis, would you take the job?
No, absolutely not. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. During the years I was involved, managing the social media, did very well. Was always one of the, annually, whether you took the month, the week, whatever, it was always among the top parks in the industry in terms of, the performance of social channels. That includes like engagements per post average, the traffic that you're driving from your social channels to your website, the conversion value, all of those kind of things. We're always, in that, top, part of the industry, the top 5, top 6, every single year. Not the case anymore. Over the last couple of years, it's kind of, really tumbled down. A variety of reasons you could point to, for why that's happened and that. But no, I had my run there, had a lot of success with it. Like what I'm doing right now, and hopefully, I mean, I catch the what's the word they use, blunders and everything that that others do, and it's not a good look.
No, and just to clarify, first of all, I'm glad they're talking about Order of the Dragon because I still think that was under leveraged with how good it is.
Yes,
yeah,
I don't know how they do it. I don't know, Ryan, if anyone looks at this stuff before they publish it. Does it get run by anybody? Do they proof their own work, and back check it to make sure that it's right, before you publish it? I mean, this is a major brand, with Kings Island, and you're going to have the occasional mistake, typo, more typo than information being wrong than anything else that you would see, or a couple words tied together, spacing's not there or something. But seldom do you see as many mistakes that have been made over the past couple of years where you have the wrong dates of when the park's open, the wrong hours, the wrong park has been posted before on the Kings Island channels and stuff. So I don't know how that all works. I mean, the centralization doesn't seem to be working out too well. It doesn't look like there's enough eyeballs on this stuff anymore. It's mostly sales oriented, 80% sales messaging. That's not going to create any engagement. You lose a lot of your fans that way. They just go to look elsewhere to get their Kings Island information. We've become one of those places. So I don't know. It's just not a good look.
What's funny is the reaction that I got from this wasn't like, oh, they screwed up again. It was like, hey, did they cut the last weekend of Haunt? Like that's what people said at this point. I got a lot of that, and then
that's how I got that. People asked me about it, and the thought was I had to go to the website to look, to see what the app said or what the website said. Did they cut the Thursday nights out? Did they cut back the last Friday? I had to check that out, or the Sunday nights even. And they were still on the website, still on the app. So I was like, okay. And then the post was wrong, and then they updated the post, deleted everybody's comment that was talking about hey, you guys say 4, I'm seeing this, and they removed all those comments. That's another thing you don't want to do is delete people's comments or hide their comments. You posted it, they saw it, you got to live with that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, the highlight is that they used Order of the Dragon. Like, I'm trying to look at the positives of these things, Don.
Yes, yeah, you are. Yeah, I mean, that's a maze that's gotten a lot of attention this year on online chatter. Not promoted heavily by the park though.
Yeah, and it really is their leverage. I mean, when we talk about, we did an episode, the most recent episode, I think, that dropped last week was, is this a failure because King's Dominion, Valley Fair, a bunch of those parks didn't charge for mazes for the last 2 weekends of Haunt, or at least they didn't last weekend, and they're not this upcoming weekend as of this recording. But they didn't have an Order of the Dragon. They didn't get like a shiny new maze like we did, and because of that, a lot of the sentiment that I saw was people that paid the $10. I mean, because $10 is kind of reasonable, but they were looking at it and they were like, all the other mazes were lame, but it was worth it for Order of the Dragon.
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan. Question for you, as we're talking about this and the question that came in. This isn't the first time. It's not the second time. It's not the 10th time. Over the past couple of years that there's been posts like this where things are wrong. What's your take on why that gets tolerated, having an abundance of mistakes like that?
You would have better insight into this than I would, but if I had to speculate, I would say that everybody has their hands in so many things that nobody notices. I think that this got posted and it was up for hours from what I understand. And it's not like they have a marketing director. It's not like they have a comms director. It's not, all these people are regional. They're not worried about an Instagram post for Kings Island. So it went up there. It had bad information. They found out, they figured it out, whatever happened, they deleted it. They put up a new one and acted like nothing ever happened. I think that if this were under the way that you were there, where it was, the social media person and the director, or the director would probably have not done anything. But back when, social media was centralized at one park and so on, this wouldn't have flown. This would have been several really rough conversations. What
Yeah, I can tell you it would have been rough conversations. It would have been, it can't happen again. Second time it happened, it would have been, okay, now you can't post anything without all of us signing off on it. There wouldn't have been that trust. It would have been micromanaged. It wasn't micromanaged when I was there, but it would have been had I had the wrong dates all the time on stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, social media posts probably should go through some sort of copy editing or something, just in case, like, hey, you misspelled that. I mean, because like you said, that stuff happens. So why wouldn't you have a second set of eyes, especially like when dates are wrong and parks are wrong and so on. I feel like, not necessarily just for the person that posted this stuff, but anybody who runs social media that's going to be seen by so many people. It's probably a best practice for somebody else to look at it. Now, it's also possible that they send it to somebody that's a regional whatever person, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, everything's spelled right, and they didn't realize that it's the wrong number of days of Haunt because they cover 6 parks.
Right, exactly.
What's your theory as to what's happening? Do you think that I'm on, or what do you think?
I think that you have someone doing it that isn't concerned about the content. They like putting themselves in TikTok videos and that they like being recognized for being involved, on the social channels now, but what the content looks like isn't really a priority. That's why it's been as sloppy as it is. I think that would be my take, is that there's not as much attention to detail that needs to be there. You have to really care about it. You have to put yourself in the audience, the people that are going to see it on social, how they're going to interpret it. Are you going to connect with them? You have to think about a lot of things like that to be successful at social media. Sometimes because you can, shoot some footage and, edit it in what's that thing called? CapCut.
CapCut.
Yeah, you think you've grown up with social media and you know how to do it. That doesn't mean you know how to do it. There's a lot more involved. It's, can you write? Can you put it in a way to connect with your audience? Can it resonate with them? Is it going to drive traffic back to your web? I mean, there's so many things you have to put in to it before you hit, the post button, the publish button. And if you just, put it together, and don't really pay attention to the details in that, which obviously is happening because it happens, frequently.
Yeah.
You're going to get what you get, and there's nobody, like you said, at the park level, nobody on the ground floor there, boots on the ground, that's looking at this stuff, or that is getting run up the flagpole with, especially when you have a lot of inexperience. They mentioned looks like high school intern or whatever coming in to do it. It's not to that level. I mean, it's better than that. But you still would like to have, those boots on the ground, and you're accountable. You're not being held accountable here because this happens too frequently.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I'm not sure if I agree with one thing you said, because speaking from experience, like there have been times when I've like screwed up editing Tower Topics or whatever, things that are like embarrassing for the podcast. And for me, it's like, especially when the park's open, it's like, well, that's particularly embarrassing because people know me and they know what I look like and stuff, and they know who did this. So if, they want to put themselves in TikTok videos and stuff like that, I think, I'm not sure where the mentality is, but I think that it's extra embarrassing when things like this happen, because it's not just like, oh, Kings Island put out something that's incorrect. It's, we know the person that does the social and they did it incorrectly, and that's who they are. They're standing right over there.
Yeah.
So
and sometimes, sometimes, Ryan, though, you need to have a lot of experience. You need to get it somewhere, and you get that all out of your system with the sloppiness before you do this for a major brand, and by the time you get to a place like Kings Island, you've got enough experience that what you're supposed to be doing, what it's supposed to look like, how to go back through and proof and edit, and check what you put for the dates available, go back to the website, look at that, make sure that you're matching up, you're counting numbers, like, okay, I got 4. Oh, wait a minute here, there's 6, wait a minute, 7 days, so I mean, just, you got to do a lot of things like that, and that comes with experience, and the only way to get experience is by doing it. It's just that you really want to get that before you get on the big stage there, that a place like a Kings Island is.
I think part of it is maybe an eagerness to get it done, because I think what happened was it wasn't proofread by anybody, including the original poster. So, and that's something that like kind of comes with age and stuff. And it's like, this is your job and you have to give it undivided attention. I mean, it's like every once in a while, like, I'll put up posts with the Tower Topic show, and I'll screw something up. I'm also doing that while I'm doing 3 other things for my full-time job.
Yeah.
If it was my job to post on social media for Tower Topics, everything would be thought out and make sure this is correct and make sure that the grammar is perfect and, is it more captivating? But, there's only a couple social channels that the park runs on. So, stop and slow down and read what you did and fact check it. And, fortunately, this kind of stuff comes with experience. So
yeah, and this was not the only question we got about this. So there were several people that noticed it, submitted it. This was the most detailed question, so that one is the one that got chosen for this. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a little, especially when it got built up to a certain level that it did. Taking Kings Island socials from the ground floor, building it to what it was as one of the top, 5 or 6 in the entire industry on a consistent basis. So there's a lot of pride in that. I took a lot of pride in what got posted, and how it would connect and resonate with the audience and that. So from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, you hate to see things that, you built up, not at that's, not continuing the same level or even getting better, than what it used to be.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know how much power they have anymore. so I don't want this to come across as slinging mud, because what I'm about to say is true, but it's kind of like a lot of the creativity is gone. So I don't know if that's just like the people doing the social media now just don't feel like it, or if it's more like the people doing the social media on the park level don't have that kind of authority. And I think that may be it.
Well, it
You
could be
know?
authority. It's also, the kind of experience level you have, what to look for, what's going to connect with people. I mean, there's just so many things that, go into it. The question said, if they called, would I come back and fix the social media circus? No. If they had questions like, how can we do this better or something, I certainly would offer, some suggestions, just based on my experience and ways they could get better at it, but that'll never happen. They'll never reach out, for that kind of thing. But, other people have, at different places, different brands, have reached out to me and said, what can we do? Can you analyze our social media? What can we do to make it more polished, to make it better and stuff? So, other people do. And then some people, they would be afraid to, or they wouldn't be allowed to, to reach out and ask for some advice from someone that, has been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
I predict that within the next, let's say, 12 hours, you're going to get a call from Travis Kelce himself asking you to come to the park and fix the social media.
I don't know, it needs to be fixed. It just needs to be more, I don't know, attention to detail. We'll just leave it at that. That the attention
Well,
to
it's
detail
it
is
also,
not.
like, I agree. I completely agree. There's too many mistakes. There's also no creativity and stuff. There's no original stuff. There's no blogs. It's
You have
just,
to be out in the park, though. Number one, you have to be out. You have to be looking for things. There's so many times where people will say, "Well, we don't have anything to really talk about right now." You always have things to talk about. You can make a story out of anything. You walk around. I could circle Kings Island and I could find easily 20 different things to do a story on, to get whether it's a blog, a social media post, to get the news media to do a story on it. So you just have to know what to look for in that. And you know um, sometimes experience, you get there with that, and other times you either have, it's like a natural thing, you just know it when you see it, and that's a story, and then you spin it into something. So uh, I don't know, but again, this wasn't the only question on this. It's something that happens with a good degree of frequency, and it shouldn't happen, especially when you're a major brand like that.
yeah. Well, our next question is actually going to be a voicemail. And if you want to leave us a voicemail, then you can do that by calling 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. Let's hear what they have to say.
Hey, Tower Topics. This is Alex in Cincinnati. I wanted to point out that Kings Island, on their website this past weekend, they said, we're guests who exit the park after 6 p.m. will not be allowed to re-enter the same day. So I'm very much a local, and I was at the park earlier in the day, and I thought, why not take my chance, and maybe they won't even check, or maybe since I left before 6, I will be allowed in, and that was not the case. So it was pretty frustrating, but I let customer service know, and I think the language could be just changed to make more sense to people allowed to re-enter the park after 6 p.m. Just simple as that. And when I wake up on Tuesday morning, I check the website, and they did change it to something much more simple. So I just think it's frustrating that it wasn't clear in the first place on the website, like with a lot of other things we've seen. Should this policy be relooked? Because maybe they should be letting more people into the park because they need to make more money. I don't know. Not sure exactly what it says on the website now, but it's much more clear, and I feel like I might have had something to do with it. Bonus question, though. I think one of the cheaper things the park could do that would be really cool is give the racer a finish line. I mean, I don't think it would cost that much, and I think it would be a really cool concept, kind of adding on to your guys' theming video that you guys did a couple weeks ago. So that's all I got. I really enjoyed the show. And yeah, see you at Kings Island.
Great points.
Yeah, I think that not being able to re-enter after a certain time, that's been there since Halloween Haunt. Was introduced as the rebrand back in 2007. At one time it was 7 o'clock. You couldn't come back in after 7, and that gave families a chance. If you were there on a Saturday, you had time at 5 o'clock, whatever, to get your family back home and come back if you wanted to. If it was 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock makes that a little tight to be able to do that. There's a lot of frustration, with people that try to do that, but it has been in place. There is signage that tells you, around the park, that, after 6 o'clock, you can't get back in, so there's always gonna be frustration. The park does what it can, to try to make people aware that is the situation. They try to minimize, those things happening. I do know there are exceptions made at times, for people when they come back in, or maybe they give them a little bit of breathing room. They're not going to do it at 6 o'clock and 15 seconds. You can't get back in. So there's some things like that they work with. But Ryan, I'll let you give your thoughts on that before we move on to the racer piece.
Yeah. So the 6 o'clock no reentry thing, I know it's a safety thing. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of it is there's a lot of vehicles and they're worried about that along with the fog and stuff. And let's be honest, it's also they don't want people going out to their car and taking shots of Fireball when they could be buying them in the park. But yeah, the 6 o'clock thing, I think maybe if you enter after 6 o'clock, you can't re-enter. That should be the rule. Because there was a time when I came to the park at like noon and I stayed for 45 minutes or so and then left and decided to come back with some friends around like 8:30, and it wouldn't let me in because I assumed that was the rule, the one that I just laid out. And fortunately I went to guest services and I was just like, hey, I was here this morning, and they realized I wasn't drunk or anything, so they let me in. So I don't know how tight the policy is or anything, but my understanding is that very much so the rule on paper is that that's what it is. But
more like guidelines.
Yeah, my thought is that kind of what I said before. I think that if once you enter starting at 6 o'clock, you can't leave and come back, because that's why they have that rule. But if you leave or if you scan in at 1:30, like you're not going to stay there all day and go to Tricks and Treats and then go out to the parking lot and bang that Jack Daniels and then come back in. That's just not going to be a thing. So I think it should be like after 6 o'clock, once you scan in, that's it. Like, do you think that's a happy medium?
Yeah, I do. I do think that's a happy medium. And sometimes too, it depends on, who you're dealing with, how hardline they want to be on it. Some, they're going to go by the book. This is it. No exception. And there's other, they take the situation, like when you came back at 8:30, they take it under consideration, and then, they let you in. So I think there's a little bit of a, we talk about inconsistencies, a little bit of that with this, where there are times that the rule is there on paper, but it's just based on, the situation. Everything's different. They handle it on a case by case basis. But moving on to the racer piece, I think that wouldn't be that expensive to add some like finish line flags going into the tunnel, coming back into the station. I think that would be kind of a cool thing to do. Be easy to do. Would add some little theming to the ride. So I would be all for that.
It'd also be kind of easy to do from a technical standpoint. That would be really impressive, is to actually have like a sensor there and it tells you which, because honestly, the cool thing about the racers are usually pretty close. And from your perspective, you always think you won. Have you noticed that? Like,
no, no, I know when my side's won or lost. I do.
But what I'm thinking is it should tell you if you won or lost, or like what the time differential was. Like they could do something like that. That would be inexpensive. That would add a whole other element to the ride. I like that idea.
Yeah.
All right. If you got your own questions, you can send it to us. First name, city you're from, as well as your question, comment, concern. Hosts, HOSTS, at towertopics.com. That's hosts at towertopics.com. If you don't like sending emails, neither do I, then you can send us a text or a voicemail, 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. If you send us a text, we'll read it. If you leave us a voicemail, we may play it, just like we did for this previous question about re-entry.
Yep. And so, Ryan, we have launched an online store. Very exciting. Tell our listeners a little bit about what's available.
If you hate Tower Topics as much as I do, then you can get yourself an I Hate Tower Topics t-shirt. See that there? You can show off to everybody at Kings Island that you hate Tower Topics. This is your ticket to Media Day. I'm telling you that. Now, if you like Tower Topics, like, I guess that's okay too. And I have, t-shirts like this that show off Tower Topics. Yeah, we got the old script logo. We've got Tower Topics hats, as you've seen me wearing. We've got an alternate logo hat, which, here it is. So that's an alternate logo, which is really cool. This logo is our top selling merch logo, by the way. A logo we don't even use except for on merchandise. But you know what really hurts my soul, Don? And this is being serious. Through the only great statistics I have right now, since we're so early, is through YouTube. And our most clicked item is this exact shirt, the red I Hate Tower Topics t-shirt. Now, with that being said, I did feature it on the last video.
So I mean, it's front and center. You can't miss it.
No, I'm saying, like, there's a thing, if you watch our shows, that it'll pop up a thing like, oh, Ryan's wearing a red I Hate Tower Topics t-shirt. Click here to buy it. So that's why it is. But still, it's kind of funny that the Tower Topics store is, I Hate Tower Topics is the #1 clicked item. We've only sold this one so far, but I've had a lot of people. Now, we've only been doing this a couple days, but I've had a lot of people saying, like, they plan to get this one because that's so funny. Tons of other ones going out though. The old logo from what we just switched from, the current logo, like the one on the hat, the alternate logo, like on this hat, all very, very popular. And this one is our top seller, except for the other logo. I think this is my favorite though. That's why I bought that one.
I thought when I first saw that design that would be our top seller, that people would absolutely love that. And then, you're kicking yourself for not introducing that to begin with, when we first started Tower Topics over 300 episodes ago. But it's available now. And again, just go to the online store and, kind of browse it. I think you'll find, you'll be impressed with the depth of the items that are available for Tower Topics.
Yep. We've already sold, I was looking at it. We've sold magnets, stickers. Please don't put the stickers around the park, by the way. We sold a tumbler. Really good stuff. So store.towertopics.com is where you can find all of your I Hate Tower Topics, and to a lesser extent, Tower Topics merchandising needs. I'm Ryan Sir. That's Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.